Hello, this is a message about anti-bias teaching from your school. Typically, we focus on anti-racism at our school, but for this presentation, I'm going to share about anti-biases because that's the overarching idea that we are trying to focus on is to eliminate any types of discrimination and barriers that might keep all of our students from feeling safe and being able to learn and feel connected in our environment, whether that means they have different abilities or different levels of income in their family, or regardless of their gender identity, or race, or any other discrimination. And the reason we focused on racism this year is because most people agree that it's good and appropriate for kids to learn that it's not fair to treat someone differently because they do things in different ways than they can, or because they identify as a boy or a girl or something else, or for them to treat someone better or worse depending on how much money their family has. One thing that is not something everyone agrees on is whether or not racism even still exists or if it's appropriate for a conversation with a child. I'd like to share this quote by Louise Derman Sparks and Julie Olson Edwards, two people who have, over the past couple of decades, done a lot of work to help develop anti-bias curriculum and do a lot of research with young children in order to inform everyone's practices. And they say, why do we do anti-bias education work? We do it because we live in a world that is not yet a place where all children have equal opportunity to become all they are. A worldwide community of educators shares the vision toward which anti-bias education strives, adapting its goals and principles to the specific needs of the children and families they work with. Now, we live in a really racialized society where there are obvious forms of racism in news and social media, where you can see police brutality and hate crimes and other overt forms of racism. What's less easy to see are the covert forms of racism that also are embedded in our society. And that's because they show up in policies and in laws. And there's a lot of resources that have been published throughout the years that document the systemic racism in our society. There are a couple listed here, and you can learn more about how it shows up in the justice system, or the housing system, or the medical system, the employment system, as well as the education system. There are also resources here listed to help kids process, well, to teach us how to help kids process and overcome biases both at school and at home. And a lot of these books are books that we've read either as a staff or individually, or has been recommended to us to inform our practice. And there's a lot more out there, but these are just a couple if you're interested in looking at them. The information that will be shared in this presentation mainly comes from the book Roots and Wings, Affirming Culture and Preventing Bias in Early Childhood by Stacy York. So our kids are sponges. They soak up messages about their worth and the value of others, and just all kinds of messages, spoken and unspoken, from their families, from the media, such as ads and cartoons and even songs they sing, as well as from peers, other kids, both their age and older kids as well. And those messages can be good or bad. And when it's not addressed, some of the effects of racism on white children are a denial of reality, where they feel like it's not okay to acknowledge differences and they have to pretend they don't see them because when they bring them up, they're told that's not nice, We don't notice color. Everybody's the same. Another effect is rationalization, which is a common defense mechanism in which individuals use what seems to be logical to create elaborate explanations that justify behavior that might be questionable. For instance, if white kids are just playing with white kids, um, there's a quote where one child said, "We're accustomed to playing with our own," and another said, "It's just easier to play with your own," meaning their own kind. And another effect is rigid thinking, where they may think their way of living in the world is the one and only right way. Superiority, where they might feel that they're better than people of color because that's what the society tells them about themselves. Also, fear and hatred because they're raised in a racist society that shows images that teaches them to fear people of color. They're dangerous, they're criminals. Um, Also, fragility is another effect because white privilege creates a protective bubble that allows white children to grow up without having to think about, understand, or empathize with children of color or experience the stress of racism that they face on a daily basis. And as you can imagine, racism also has effects on children of color, which are different. One of the effects is over identification with white people, where they may prefer people who are lighter skinned in their family or people who are white skinned. They may choose white skinned dolls over one that matches their skin tone more. And they might outright deny that they are the color they are because they don't want what comes with that, the negative messages that they've soaked in about that. They can experience separation and alienation, feeling like they don't belong in schools and they don't want to belong to their family or their friends or have to change themselves to quote unquote act white in order to fit in to society or school. They may experience confusion and bewilderment um, because racism is something that children of color can't escape. They can't turn it off. And it can feel like an attack on their hearts and minds and something that happens on a daily basis. They also might experience rejection, being told they're not invited to a birthday party or they can't play with someone on the playground or feeling ignored or passed over by the teacher. And it just builds up over time and it can lead to shame where a child who said, "I wish I'd never been born." And they can feel defective and unworthy and unacceptable as a person because of the messages they're taking in from society. It also might lead to anger and rage. There are many misconceptions people have in regards to the conversation of should children talk about race. One misconception is that children are too young to notice differences among other people. And the truth of the matter is, children notice differences and form attitudes about human diversity in their early years. And there's some research that has been done, and these following slides will be quotes from children who are 3, 4, and 5 years old. You cut your hair. Now you got boy hair. He's not a boy, he's got an earring. You can't do that, you're a girl. What's my skin color? Look at that muddy guy. You talk funny. I'm glad I don't have to eat that yucky stuff. You can't play, you got brown skin. White girls go first. You chink, get out of my way. You're not an Indian. Where's your horse? She can't be my friend. She's got ugly clothes. Deaf people can't work. Blind people can't have babies. I can't sit next to him. He can't talk. I'll help her. She can't do it. We hate handicaps. You can't have two dads. Girls don't marry girls. You fag. So there are different stages of racial awareness and prejudice that come up throughout childhood development. So infants are developing self-awareness, and they're starting to learn who is like me, who's different than me, and they show fear and mistrust of anyone who looks different than them. Toddlers are beginning to identify themselves as individuals. So they experience and show shame. They're sensitive to and catch feelings from adults, meaning even if someone doesn't outright say, I'm uncomfortable, they are reading the body language of their caregiver. And if they can tell they're uncomfortable in a situation, they start to feel that way as well. At 2 years old, they're identifying people with the words me, mine, and you. And they can recognize physical characteristics and classify people by gender. And they also might start using racial labels, and they can tell the difference between black and white. 3 and 4 year olds notice differences among people. They can sort people according to their physical characteristics. They can associate attributes with races and cultures. They show preference for their own race and culture. And they tend to play with same-race classmates rather than classmates from other races. They're susceptible to believing stereotypes. They might make false associations and overgeneralization, thinking that all members of a race or culture do things the exact same way, and they show favoritism to their own culture or race. The research also shows that 3 and 4 year olds are able to resist stereotypes. And with cross-racial friendships at this age, they're more likely to have a diverse and social network as a teen and adult. And when children are 5 and 6, they understand cultural identity and enjoy exploring cultural heritage of their classmates. They can identify stereotypes. They can explore what's real or pretend, what's fair and unfair. And they also tend toward rigid thinking and behavior. They might show aggression through insults and name calling and express the attitude that my race or culture is better than yours. Children who are 7 to 9 years old develop gender and racial constancy. So they understand group membership and they form groups to distinguish who they are from who others are. They become more open in their attitude toward diversity, but their friends become more like them. They can consider multiple attributes. They're aware of racism against their own group. They want and need a wealth of accurate information. Another misconception is that pointing out or talking to children about human differences will only make cross-cultural relations worse, when in fact, including human diversity in the curriculum and giving children simple, accurate information helps them see differences as normal. It also prevents them from developing negative or fearful attitudes toward diversity. On the other side, not talking about it makes it feel like a taboo subject, and it creates the feeling of shame and fear when thinking about diversity, which could be why the white child who said it's just easier to play with your own kind mentioned that, because they don't have to worry about tiptoeing around any conversations to possibly offend someone, rather than learning how to work together and to move past those awkward moments in order to develop real friendships with people from different groups. Another misconception is multicultural education is necessary only if there are different cultures in the school, when in fact, this is relevant for all children in all grades. Children in all white, racially segregated classrooms are at risk for growing up without the social skills and knowledge base they need in order to live in a diverse country and to work in a global marketplace. Some people think that multicultural education will create separatism and weaken national unity, when in fact it reinforces patriotism, democracy skills, and citizenship skills, all of which promote a stronger sense of national unity. People might view multicultural education as an attack on white people, when in fact the whole purpose is to recognize and honor ethnic identities and cultural traditions of all people, including people from European descent. However, it does challenge the exclusive European American orientation of childhood development theories, caregiving and teaching practices, and curriculum, but it doesn't attack anyone. The goal isn't to tear anyone down, it's to lift everyone up so that everyone is visible and everyone is valued. There are four main goals of anti bias teaching. The first is to develop positive, knowledgeable, and confident self identity within a cultural context. We really want all of our children to feel confident in who they are, who their family is, who their ancestors are, and to be able to thrive in their identity. And the second goal is to demonstrate comfortable, empathetic interaction with diversity among people. So, really being able to make close friends who aren't just like them. And the third goal is to think critically about bias. And there's always going to be biases in different forms, but we don't want our kids to just soak those in without thinking about them. We want them to really notice them and call attention to them and challenge them. And the fourth one is to stand up for themselves and others in the face of biases. And again, all kids understand fair versus unfair. How do I want to be treated? How am I treating other people? And so these goals will help all of our kids to love themselves and to love their neighbors and to really make a safe community where everyone can focus on learning and thriving rather than having to feel scared of how they might be treated or how they might be perceived. So, to sum it up, culturally relevant anti bias education is a moral conviction to help all children reach their fullest potential. It is not political correctness. It is a way to achieve fairness and equity in childcare and educational settings. It's not a way to solve all society's problems. It is an education reform movement that is almost 50 years old. It's not a trend or a fad. It is for all children. It is not only for children of color. It is a way to embrace and equally value cultural diversity within the United States. It is not white bashing or a rejection of Western or European American culture and tradition. It is opening children's minds to diversity and helping them think critically about injustice. It is not ignoring or devaluing differences. It is relevant to all ages and all areas of the curriculum. It is not simply one set of social studies, children's literature, and the arts. It is a way to embrace universal rights and wrongs while respecting differences. It is not the idea that anything goes and everything is relative. It is an intentional and sustained effort. It's not a one time event like a cultural fair, a thematic curriculum unit, or an annual celebration. It is a lifelong journey that begins with knowing yourself as a cultural being, and it's not something teachers and administrators can learn in a one time workshop. Really, our goal and intention is that our children will have less work to do in terms of their own personal healing and in healing their communities when they're older. And that's only done when we work together because we don't know what we don't know. And so we need everyone's input to make this the best experience it can be for our kids. And I say our kids because we love them and we're all on the same team wanting the best for them. And so that comes when we can collaborate, staff with each other, staff with families, families with families, children with their families and their teachers. We learn from everyone has something to offer. And so we really hope that you'll partner with us in this so that we can make it the best experience for our kids. Okay, we're hoping to change the world for the better together. Thank you for listening.